So we're super excited for our second day. And if you continue to come back tomorrow. And I think this is going to be great because this is a live session where you sit with Pastor Ben-Hur, listen to his passion and vision for all Koreans, how we can collaborate together, learn from one another, serve from one another without any gaps in between generations, but also you get to ask him some good questions. So come ready with some hard, good questions, burning questions, and you can ask it anonymously. Just because if you use a Q&A function on the Zoom, only panelists can see that. So you can do it that way, or also you can just ask questions using free chat function. Oh, speaking of, if you also want to go ahead, want to enter your name for today's drawing, please, once again, write your church name and where you're chiming in from. I know this is repetitive, but we want to get into a good habit of that so we can get some good roster of who's been here, and also your email address so that we can send you gifts at the end. Okay, and then we have one more day coming up, so don't forget about that. That's super exciting. And one more thing, yesterday I did talk about you guys being able to submit an article to Influence Magazine, which is a leadership resource that goes out to all AG credential ministers. That's probably about 50,000 members. That's a lot of people who will be reading your article. So I gave you actually a wrong address. I wanted to bring you guys back to this and kind of give you this resource. Influence Magazine submission guidelines. I will share that link in the chat in a moment, but I just want you to get a quick look about online submissions. It has to be between 700 or 1,000 words. And so don't feel like, oh man, I'm not a good writer. You have an experience. We can you can use a lot of different tools to fine tune your wording and the tone and the voice, but you have so much to offer. So don't let the fear of, oh, I haven't been writing for a while to hinder you from contributing. People want to hear your voice. We also have a video that we want to show you. Without further ado, I do want to share this because it's about 50-minute long. So if you would just get your pen and paper, that's going to be awesome.
Well, thank you again, everyone, for being here. I do appreciate your time. It means a lot to us that you would take the time to come and to share your wisdom and the testimonies of what God is doing in your locations, in your churches, and among your leadership. So thank you very much from the KEF, all of us here. Julie, we'll start with you. Julie Kraus is an Assemblies of God intercultural missionary and retired New York City teacher. She serves our international church family and New York Ministry Network churches as intercultural ministries director since her husband Paul's passing in March of 2020. Prior to their New York appointment, Paul and Julie served as AG World missionaries for 20 years, mostly in French-speaking West Africa. Julie is a certified facilitator with a Cultural Intelligence Center and has a passion for equipping believers to credibly share their faith with their culturally different neighbors. She loves African art, speaking French, and meeting people from all over the world. She is an ordained minister and U.S. missionary, but her favorite title is Gigi, to grandsons Riley William, age 10, and Jackson Paul, age 5. What are some of the foundational concepts and practices that you've found helpful to building a more accurate perception of self and those with whom we interact?
Okay, thank you so much, Jason, for giving me the privilege of being here. I'm honored to be on a panel with Teng and Dr. Joe, now we know. Understanding our cultural values, I think of that as my mom's voice in the back of my head. In fact, my mother was here recently and we got out some strawberry jam and I started to put a spoon in and we both laughed that we could still hear my great grandmother saying, you never put a knife into jam. It always has to be a spoon. Otherwise you'll make it bleed. We might be the only people in the world, but we go with that and it stays with you, your mother's voice in the back of your head. So understanding that voice I'm hearing and understanding that what the people I'm working with, the cultural or behavioral values of those who serve and work with, it makes it possible for us to be both honest and effective, to be true to our convictions and achieve our goals. We don't want to just do one or the other. And the foundation for what I'm sharing, it comes from the Cultural Intelligence Center. It's based on science of the emotional intelligence. But the challenge with emotional intelligence is, for the most part, what's written, how to deal with toxic behavior or how to project more confidence, it's written by Westerners for Westerners. And the same is true for most of our leadership books. 95% of leadership resources come from the US, written by Westerners for Westerners. In the US, we're taught to look people in the eye, speak up for yourself, smile when you speak. But those same tips can get you in a lot of trouble in a diverse and global context. Direct eye contact, it can mean confidence and respect in some cultures, but it means insubordination and disrespect in others. Speaking up demonstrates confidence and control in the US. Silence demonstrates confidence and control in China. A dad crying in front of his daughter, it communicates weakness in some cultures. But a dad crying in front of his daughter communicates love in others. Studies on cultural value differences have been around for long enough for us to know that they're really important, they're effective, but how we see ours and those we work with is going to be the difference between building trust or having conflict. So do you lean towards individualism or collectivism? Are you one of those who desires and wants to have personal responsibility? It's all about personal choice. Or do you first think, how will this impact my team or my community? I had a text this week from a friend telling me about a Chi Alpha missionary who's has a real short window for raising her support because there was a big delay over her application, not from the district, not from US missions, but this worker was waiting for approval from her parents. Now, from an individualistic perspective, it's my choice. I graduated college. Hey, it's my life, my choice, my future. But from a collectivist perspective, the implications on the family matter. Imagine the investment these parents have made to send this child to college. And now they're not going to use their degree to earn a living, which would benefit the entire family, future generations. And instead, they're going to raise support from churches and friends. That's going to take the whole family praying and hearing from God, not just the individual. Now, there is low power distance versus high power distance. The world is, for the most part, high power distance. And all of us over a certain age are more high power distance. We're comfortable when we know who's in charge. Just tell me who's in charge around here. Then I can know how to relax and how to fit in. I have a friend who comes from a very high power distance culture. Even though he's older than me, he's been in ministry for long, he's a higher, bigger deal. The moment I became intercultural ministries director, he's never stopped calling me my director. He introduces everyone. Let me introduce you to my director. High power distance. Low power distance, you see everyone the same. As we look across university campuses and some of the conflict we've experienced, it comes from that difference in low or high power distance. Are you from a more expressive or non-expressive culture? You know, when we've seen Japan experience hurricanes and typhoons, how calmly people will talk about on the news losing everything that they own, versus a more high impact or highly expressive communities like when we had in New York City, when they've been on the news, people are shouting and screaming, I can't believe what's going on. A difference in how we express. My daughter was raised in a highly expressive environment. West Africa, we show our feelings big. When we're at a funeral, we're expressing it. When we have joy, we're dancing. We do an altar call, we do an offering. It's all done with a lot of emotion. So when my daughter starts to talk with my son-in-law, who's very non-expressive, the less he responds, the more she amps up her telling. It's like he didn't get it the first time, so let me tell it with more enthusiasm. And the more enthusiastic she gets, the more inverted he becomes. I'm like, this is fun. This is like watching a sitcom. Oh my goodness. those differences in how we share our feelings, what's appropriate. Some of you, what is it, cooperative versus competitive? The US is a very competitive culture. I always think of myself as very cooperative. I come from a very competitive family. I'm always the oddball in my family. I'm like, oh, everyone can win. And then I've been with cultures that are truly cooperative. And I thought, I guess I'm more competitive than I thought. When we know how we are and how those we work with, we're able to be respectful and accomplish and show ourselves. We can be true to ourselves, and we can respect those that we're with. It's not enough for me to want to it's not enough for me, oh boy, it's not enough for me to have a goal. If I want to be respectful, I've got to do it in a way that you know I'm being respectful. If you don't know what I'm showing, then we're going to have a miscommunication. And that's how distrust comes around. I've heard from districts that they've reached out to people over and over again and gotten no response. And then I've had pastors tell me the district never gets back to me. Because we're not communicating well, we can have distrust come along so easily. So learning to communicate better, that's going to help us to be more effective.
Thank you. There's so much in that, just so many terms that I would love for you to unpack a little more. And I think there are going to be opportunities for you to come and share again with us in the future. But yeah, that would be amazing. So as you and your team and your leaders have grown in your understanding of yourself and others, how does that affect the communication, and how does that build stronger partnerships?
So the challenge is always, how do we work together on culturally diverse teams? And how do we share our faith in a relevant way, in a winsome way? I like when Paul said, I became all things to all people, that I might win some. How do we do that in a culturally hostile environment? How do we work together to be effective kingdom workers? And I would say the number one thing, the simplest thing you can do is pause. Take a deep breath. When something seems weird, you don't understand, or it seems wrong, pause and think, what else could be going on here? Pete and Jerry Scazzaro talk about incarnational listening, putting ourselves in the place of the other person and listening to what they're saying. He says, don't assume. And the reason for not assuming, he says, because the Bible condemns mind reading. I love that. We're not allowed to mind read. And when I'm assuming, I heard someone say recently, well, when they did that, they must have meant. No, they didn't. That meant to you, if you'd done it, that's what it would have meant. But when they did it, it didn't mean that, never crossed their mind. And it gets more complex. You know, when I was in Ivory Coast, one culture, it was easy to learn what the responses would be in that culture, how to demonstrate respect, how to demonstrate compassion and care. I knew what to do in one culture. But in this global, multi-generational, multicultural context, it becomes a lot more difficult. A teenager from the Arab world, are they going to be honing in on those cultural values from their home culture, or from the public school culture that they're spending more hours with every single day? And then as they're growing older, they start to have children. Are they going to begin to value more their home family cultural values or the American values where they find themselves? So you never know when you interact with someone where they are in that journey. One of the things so that we use is in our family, something that comes from Pete and Jerry Scazzaro on creating safety for communication. And it's a simple 5 things that you do. And we do this at the dinner table. And I've done it with a diverse team that I lead. And it's incredibly impacting. You'll learn things about people you won't learn any other way. And we start off with the first thing is we express appreciations. So I just want to thank you for letting me be part of this event today. We express puzzles. I'm puzzled at why it takes so long to get downtown when there's not that many cars on the road. I'm puzzled why they're always doing construction in Chicago and never seem to be finished. Express a puzzle. I'll tell you, my 5-year-old grandson, he's puzzled about so much. I learn about him when he shares what's puzzling him, because a lot is puzzling a 5-year-old. We express complaints, but only if you can suggest making changes. So I notice and I prefer. No one's allowed to complain without giving a suggestion for improvement. I like that. So I said to my grandson, the 10-year-old, this recently, I said, I noticed when you use the bathroom, you often leave the toilet seat up. I would prefer if you would put the toilet seat down so Jane doesn't drink from the toilet. New information. Everyone goes around and says something new that's happening. And then we end with hope and wishes. What's a hope that you have for the future? School's starting. I hope this is an incredibly great year for you. 5-year-old grandson. I hope I have a nice teacher. So it gives an opportunity to hear everyone's voice, because sometimes on diverse teams, some people do a lot of talking and some people will only talk if I call on them directly. So making room for everyone's voice to be heard. Another thing you can do, create an agenda. Take time then to talk about the purpose of a meeting. I never do a meeting without sending everyone an agenda, so they have an idea what I'm thinking about. And then talking about what's the purpose for the meeting, because you might be surprised halfway through a meeting that you didn't all share the same idea of the final goal. Maybe you thought it was to set up next year's meetings and they thought it was to talk about what went wrong last week. So talk about the purpose for the meeting. Someone said, be comfortable being less efficient. Dennis Rivera talked about leading from behind, caring for the lamb so we don't lose anyone. And I'm convinced that when it comes to kingdom business, it's not what we can accomplish. And you got to know I'm a doer. My lists are everywhere. But it's not what we can accomplish. It's not what we can strive to make happen. But it's how we treat each other that engages God's favor. And when we're working for eternal purposes, engaging God's favor is really our ultimate goal. I was listening to A Mighty Fortress is Our God, an old English hymn. And it says that our mortal foe, the devil, one little word will fell him. One small word will take the knees right out of the devil. God can do in an instant what all our striving cannot accomplish. So we can afford to slow down a minute, make sure that we don't lose anyone, listen to everyone, and we will be, in the end, more effective for going slow than we ever would if we plowed through fast and we lose people along the way.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing all that. That is, it's an amazing picture of what we can be as the church. And I love that, creating space, starting even within your home, like creating space, creating space for even the generations to communicate clearly with one another. And it's not just top down, but it's very much just clear and open communication, share vision, share ideas, and then also the conflict, to speak in ways that are beneficial to move forward with the goal of moving forward together. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Pastor Teng Vu graduated from the Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge program in 2004. He was elected president of the Hmong AG Fellowship in 2020. With 16 years of pastoral experience, he is currently the lead pastor at Life in Christ Church in Maplewood, Minnesota. He holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in Pastoral Studies from North Central University. He's married to his wonderful wife, Nia, and they have 4 children, 3 boys and 1 girl. Well, Teng, if you would mind sharing a few of the initiatives that you've instituted to build authentic relationships and partnerships with your ministers, especially the second and third generation leaders who are rising up in the Hmong Fellowship.
Again, thank you for giving us this opportunity to be on this platform. And I don't know, I'm following Julie's hopefully I do as good as her. So, and then Dr. Joseph, thank you so much for being here as well. And I always love listening to you. You are a man full of wisdom. So thank you so much. Yeah. We do have a mentorship program in our church, and in the Hmong AG Fellowship, I also help mentor leaders as well. And I feel like that, especially for the Hmong churches, our older generation, that was definitely not one of their strengths because of the way they grew up in Laos and during the Vietnam War and coming here. So the older generation, their way of kind of leadership is watch and see, or learn as you see, learn as you watch. And so since I took office in 2020, we did make it more of something of an importance to do that. So in our church, we have this ability to raise up in-house pastors and give them in-house credentials. And that is an application you would have to apply from the district, which gets approved by the national office. And then that's when you can give in-house credentials for not just to anybody, right? But for individuals who feel called to ministry, who want to go to whether Global University or MINSUM. In Minnesota, it's called MINSUM, Minnesota School of Ministry, and get credentials. And so the in-house credentials is for 2 years. And if it lapses, then you can no longer have in-house credentials. And so for that, one of the requirements is to have the lead pastor mentor those individuals. And so, yeah, we've had a few leaders in our church get their credentials, with me still mentoring them even after receiving credentials. And I meet with them once a month. You know, we have our one-on-ones, and I also make myself available. Even if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, they need prayer, they need somebody to talk to. I wake up to my phone ringing, and sometimes we chat, you know. So that's intentional to build authentic relationships as well. And then we do leadership development, and that is through our annual meetings, annual conferences. We are very intentional about who we choose as guest speakers, especially having older generation leaders on the board of Hmong AG. Sometimes they may say, "Why are we bringing an Anglo-speaking pastor? We're a black pastor when we're Hmong and we need Hmong speakers." And I, kindly remind them that not all Hmong people understand Hmong. So it's intentional when I do that. It's so that we don't lose the next generation. And so I feel like I'm kind of given that responsibility. And I think by doing all of this, it helps us build authentic relationships where, young generation, they can trust you, and we build trust that way. Another thing too is, with Hmong people, funerals are really long. And so you're talking about all day Saturday, right? 2 services, all day Sunday, and then Monday morning, there's a short service. And then at the burial, there's another short service. So Hmong people, they like to also butcher cows and pigs and chicken during this time to feed everybody. So it does save money, right? And they do this because they feel like this is the way you show love to your elders, or like the person who has passed, or relatives who are coming to visit. And so it is a lot of work. And honestly, a lot of the young Hmong pastors or potential leaders, they tell me all the time, "Pastor, I don't want to pastor a Hmong church. It's too much work, and funerals are long." And so, me being a second gen leader, I do help them see the value of keep doing this and stay strong until, whenever God feels like, all of this stuff, is away with. And so I think it's good to mentor and coach them and have them shadow me and everything. just having them be able to see me do these funerals and do these long weddings, and then also kind of give them hope that, wait, yeah, I mean, this is what we have to do for now. And so that's kind of what we do to help build authentic relationships. Yeah.
Thank you again for sharing that, and thank you for the work that you're doing. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Joe Girdler is the district superintendent for the Kentucky Ministry Network of the Assemblies of God, starting in 2004 until present. Pastor Joe holds 2 undergraduate degrees from the University of Kentucky, completed his master's at Asbury Theological Seminary in Missions and Evangelism, and completed his doctorate of ministry in Pentecostal leadership at Assemblies of God Theological Seminary in Springfield, Missouri. Joe and his wife, Dr. Renee V. Girdler, board certified in family medicine and specialties in women's health care and diabetes, live in a suburb of Louisville, Kentucky. They have 2 children, Stephen, married to Julia, both physicians, and they live in Los Angeles, California, and Rachel, who's married to Daniel. Rachel is an AG World Missions missionary working with human trafficking, and Daniel's a physician. They live in Long Island, New York. Pastor Joe has 2 grandchildren, James, age 5, and Maddie, 2. Pastor Joe, would you mind taking a moment to share your vision for the Kentucky Ministry Network? And then what have been some of the challenges to building diversity in the Kentucky Ministry Network that you've faced over the years, and how were you able to overcome those?
Well, first off, I want to go back to Julie. You spoke a second about somebody, you didn't want somebody drinking out of a toilet. I don't know what that was, but
My dog.
oh, your dog. Okay, great.
I call her Jane. Jane Austen.
I was just thinking you must have an adopted daughter or something that you're. I loved it. I just loved it. Your whole thing about the way we different perspectives of the way our cultures view things, and so thank you though. It was a bit of a joke, but thank you. It was just amazing, and Tang, I just love your heart. You're such a humble leader. I can clearly see why you are where you are, and I'm excited for the Hmong Fellowship. Sehi not with us, wherever you are, Sehi, if you're watching this, God bless you, and Jason, you and your team with the Korean Fellowship. I think all of us are honored just to get to be a part of a small a panel, for your leadership. I'm excited for the Korean Fellowship at this moment. This is a great season, I believe, for your all's fellowship. It's a time such as this. God's got you right where you're at, so lead on. Well, concept of, I think your question was share a little bit about my vision for the district. Is that what it was? And then what are some of the challenges that I've received to the whole multicultural piece? Is that what you're asking about, I'm assuming? And so in Kentucky, of course, I grew up in Kentucky. I'm a Kentucky boy. I'm married a Kentucky girl. I've been in Kentucky my entire life. And for those that are questioning, I do wear shoes. But I did begin to realize that when I came into the office of superintendent, which was over 20 years ago, primarily our network was, and still primarily is, totally an Anglo-English speaking network. We're a geographic network, Anglo-English speaking. And yet in our district and in much of all of your districts, I'll bet it is the same in the Hmong Fellowship. You will probably begin to see other cultures becoming a part of your churches from time to time. People are friends. People become family members. You'll begin to see that in the Korean district. I know our Hispanic friends, many of them begin to see that. They're starting to plant English-speaking churches now because of just the growth of who we are as a family. I found in Kentucky that there were numbers of cultures, refugees, groups that had come here from different, all over the world. And yet I didn't speak their language. I couldn't reach them. I didn't know how to help them. And I began to have a heartbeat that Kentucky would look more like heaven, Jason. So, this isn't rocket science. What's my vision for Kentucky? My vision really for Kentucky several years ago was simply that we would begin to look a little bit more like heaven. So I didn't say it. I don't remember who said it, but I remembered it from years ago. The color of your soul is more important than the color of your skin. I'm more concerned really about our diversity being, honestly, it's our path to greatness. All of the diversity that we have, our strength doesn't lie in our differences. Our strength lies in our similarities. And I've often said to myself and to the team that I've tried to work with through the years, I'm a team leadership kind of a person. Part of the vision is that. One is I wanted us to look more like heaven. I wanted us to be aware, which is a lot of what Julie talked about, just awareness. I wanted us to be aware. And then maybe a third part, and these are not all written down, these are just from my head, but a third part might have been that I wanted us to have a team leadership approach. I began to realize that a diverse mix of voices in my circle, it really led for better discussion, it led for better decisions, and it led for better outcomes. And I started years ago just trying to instill those kinds of thoughts into our team. So even now as superintendent, I realize somewhere the buck stops here. For the president of a fellowship or whatever, the buck stops there. We get it. But I hardly ever make a decision by myself. If there's something I really want to do, I sit down with a team. I want to hear their heart. I want to hear where they're at. I want to hear their buy-in. If they're feeling hesitant about something I'm sensing, I just think it's probably not the Spirit leading me that way. So I slow down. Another thing that I did was related to vision casting was I learned a long time ago, I don't have to be the brightest bulb on the Christmas tree. There is a lot of strength in all of our diversity and all of you. I love this last few minutes just listening to you guys talk. I learned in my world, in the world of superintendent's fellowships, and it's probably the same in ethnic fellowships, there is just so many tools in the tool shed with so many wonderful leaders from honestly many different cultures who may do it differently. It's just that I want all those tools in my tool shed. I want them all in my tool shed. So early on, part of my vision, I decided I didn't have to create it all by myself. You don't have to be an isolated island and do it by yourself. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Often wheels are already invented by friends around the country and around the world who have done wonderful things for the Lord. Why not catch the heart of some of their vision and say, that is what I want us to be like? And so I took a couple of vision thoughts from some friends of mine around the country back some time ago. And here's some snippets of just some things that I took from other people that became mine. They did, you just own it. For instance, part of our vision, I'll look over and read them for you real quick because it's easier. Who we serve is more important than what we do. I took that on as a vision point. I didn't create that. I received it. I want it. I took it. Another one, we work hard to make it easy for everybody we serve. I took it. I didn't create it. I just took it. Here's another one. Julia, I think, talked about this one too. A vision point. We assume good intentions. It doesn't matter what I deal with in the district office as a superintendent or an executive officer, I'm going to assume good intentions. And another one was we took on, and we've got like 10 or 12 of these. These are just a few of them to give you an idea of how I created vision. Another one we did was little things make a big difference. So while you may not have all the answers, and maybe you feel you're not the most gifted one in the team sitting around this table or this conference room, maybe you feel you're unworthy to be a part of this panel or be on this thing that we're doing at this conference. You're here for a call and for a purpose, and God's call in your life is enough. And what He's done in your life is powerful. Just share your heart, share who you are, and people will interpret that. Well, anyway, all of those little kinds of things. And again, there's like a dozen different little things like that. That took on the heartbeat of what my vision was like. I wanted our vision to become not just Anglo-English speaking. I wanted it to look more like heaven. I wanted diverse culture. I wanted to create a managing diverse workforce in the system that we were. I wanted a diverse workplace to be a process, not a destitution, not a destination. So I wanted it to be a process. So all of us thinking independently together, that brings power. And when you've got diverse cultures, man, you get a lot of independent thinking. You get a lot of unique ways to pull this together. So I told people through the years, Jason, in building vision, I don't micromanage as a leader. I've never micromanaged. I try to put people on my team who I believe in, who are solid, and who are competent. And I've always told them through the years, you might build the house differently than I would build it. I just want it to be structurally sound. And so if you build it and it's structurally sound and it is effective and efficient for the kingdom, I'm going to applaud you all day long. Now, if that building falls down or we've got some structural problems, then we'll tweak those as we go. All that's a part of a little bit of part of vision. What are some of the challenge points that I've run across? Well, one is it's not if you find challenge, it's when you find challenge. So you will find challenge. Maybe some of the challenges that I've run across in the journey have to do with styles of communication. I think Teng talked about that maybe a little bit, just differences from his. I loved your analogy of your 4-day funerals. Oh my goodness. Or your analogy of going to a hospital, and sitting so long in a hospital, or us Americans, give me 5 minutes and go on, please. It's like, I'm tired. I don't want to be dealing with people. Just the cultural differences, but all of that is communication. It's all how we communicate with one another. So styles of communication, it often leads to some misunderstanding, and sometimes in the tone that things are shared, labeling it as aggression or not aggression or whatever. Julia touched on some of those. Styles of communication has been a challenge, Jason. I've run across that. A lot of the leadership things I did for people, which has been used in various locations around the country and the world, but a lot of that can be found at my website, joegirdler.com. But when I was doing one of the books that I did, and it was being translated by our publishers into Spanish, the Spanish translator translated one of the books, and after it was published and sent out, another Hispanic culture from another country contacted me and said, Dr. Girdler, oh my goodness, you've got to make sure you change this. You've got to call the editor and change this, et cetera, et cetera. So we look it up. I don't speak Spanish. So I contacted my Spanish people on my team. We look it up. It's totally perfect. It was totally fine. What's the deal with it? It's great. It's just that this culture, all speaking Spanish, this culture viewed that technically in communication. They viewed that differently than did this culture from two different countries. Number one, challenges, probably communication styles. For what it's worth, I did not have the publishers change that. I left it as is. And then wherever country I'm at, I was in Colombia about a month ago speaking on that very book. And I just apologized to them in advance if it didn't interpret the way they thought it should. Obviously, another challenge I've run across is the language barrier. I had a great meeting earlier this week, as a matter of fact, with a church. It's about a church of about 200, 250. The pastor is from Myanmar. It is a Zomi language speaking church. And he speaks beautiful English, but many of his team does not. Many of his church do not. And in general, I still found myself struggling just with language barriers. Things that by nature I would want to, in my culture, communicate or share in a certain way, warm fuzzies, Julie. Although I couldn't share from my personality simply because of the language culture barrier. But I think that is another scenario. And I've been around long enough now that I've been a part of a number of ethnic fellowship events through the years in our movement, our beautiful AG family. And I think all of you in the ethnic fellowships, my hat goes off to all of you, because all of you are facing, I heard Teng mention it a minute ago, he's second or third generation, he said it. All of you as leaders in the ethnic fellowships are now facing the language barrier issues. Your children are growing up learning English, sometimes not even knowing their mother language. That burdens me. And my heart would be to you in the Korean fellowship. If any of you do speak Korean, if any of you that would be listening to this speak Korean, never forget where you came from. Never forget who you are. Never forget your culture. Go to bed at night praying in Korean, if you know it, over your grandchildren. Because it's critically important. not only is it a challenge, it's critically important.
That has been so powerful. As we are kind of wrapping this quick video, and there's a few more minutes at the end, but we want to respect your time. And so we will send this recorded session in the email update later on, just like you got the email this morning. We'll do that, but that was really powerful. So thank you so much. And I also had asked our leadership to share a little bit about their biggest takeaway. How about we make it very short to respect our people's time? Jason, what was your big takeaway?
Big takeaway was I loved seeing and hearing from a diverse panel, and that the heart is the same, that they want to equip the leaders of the next generation, wherever they're coming from, wherever the God's calling them from, and using every resource that they have to make sure that they are equipping the saints for the service to the church.
That's awesome. How about you, Joe?
I think for me, what Dr. Girdler was saying about how our colors of our skin might be different, but what matters is the color of our soul. I think that was kind of the nuance of what he was saying, and I love that because we live in such a divided culture right now, and I think we as Christians, we have a responsibility of uniting and bringing people together. And then I think that attitude is something that we need. And coming from a church that's in a bubble within the Korean American context, but me being a lead pastor of a somewhat diverse ministry, it's hard to break through that. And but that was a great reminder to me that we have long ways to go and we need to make the effort.
That's great. Thank you. How about you, Chris?
I think for me, just like they're just being encouraged by their heart and passion to unify their community together. And then also, like, sometimes when you do ministry, like you forget to how to bridge between generations.
Yeah.
So it's just like a reminder for me, and then just like think about like what is a way for me to help to be part of that the kingdom mindset, and then also the bridging the gap.
That's good. That's good. I also found it that a lot of what they were talking about are very transferable to wherever you're at. So even though we are Korean English Fellowship, we are serving a diverse community body. Our Great Commission is to make disciples of all nations. So let's think outside this Korean mindset. Although we love being Korean and the Korean is part of who we are, it's more than that. And so let's always think God's kingdom, big size vision. So guys, I'll just look out for the email. I'm going to send you a lot of different links for tomorrow's Zoom. We are electing our new president and vice president. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for giving us that 4 extra minutes to bless you. We'll see you back tomorrow at the same time, and have a blessed day. God bless you.